TMCnet at NextCom 2008.
Good afternoon. Welcome again to NextCom 2008. I'm Erik Linask. I'm sitting here with Sam Lisle, Market Development Director for Fujitsu. Welcome, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Erik.
So one of the things I know Fujitsu's been involved in heavily is packet optical networking.
Yes.
Can we get started with just a brief overview, really, of what is packet optical networking?
Okay, great. Yeah, packet optical networking is kind of the next evolution of optical networking technology. In the SONET world, you had plain old ADMs and then MSPPs, and now they're evolving to packet optical networking platforms. In the same way, you had point-to-point WDM systems for Metro, then you had Metro ROADM systems, and now they're evolving as well to packet optical networking platforms. So it's a sort of a convergence along the lines of the SONET line, along the WDM line, and it's actually a convergence on the Ethernet line as well for basically for universal aggregation and transport applications.
Great. Now, you recently made an announcement around your packet optical networking platform. Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we actually made a couple of announcements. Last year we announced our FlashWave 9500 packet optical networking platform. This year we announced a companion product called the FlashWave CDS, stands for Compact Delivery System, that provides let's say all the benefits of packet optical networking, but in a very small form factor for out at the customer edge. The other thing we announced was our specific support for connection-oriented Ethernet across both of these platforms. Connection-oriented Ethernet is a capability that allows a service provider to build an Ethernet-centric aggregation and transport infrastructure right in the packet optical environment.
And when you're talking about the connection-oriented Ethernet, what kind of technologies are we talking about there? That work well?
Yeah, there are several technologies that people have been looking at for the last couple of years, because I think the industry has understood that they need to provide. Ethernet is inherently a connectionless protocol for enterprise environments, but to make it really scale and build an infrastructure for the service provider world, it has to be connection-oriented. So people have been looking at a variety of protocols. But we think the ideal protocol for providing connection-oriented Ethernet is a protocol called PBBTE, also known as IEEE 802.1 QAY. And the reason it's such a good fit for providing connection-oriented Ethernet capability is it fits very nicely with the way in which service providers deploy metro networks. Typically, when you build a metro aggregation network, you're provisioning and managing circuits. And those circuits can be TDM circuits or SONET circuits or wavelength circuits. And with PBBTE, now it can be Ethernet circuits as well. So this whole circuit-based approach to building a network can now be implemented regardless of the type of traffic that you're trying to manage and backhaul to the service edge.
It seems there's sort of a renewed or a new focus on Ethernet technologies.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very much so. Enterprises love Ethernet services because they can just take their enterprise router, have a very simple interface to the service provider, and then they can get more bandwidth on that interface or more connections and services on that interface without the service provider having to do a truck roll. So there's lots of benefit to an enterprise user to be able to hand Ethernet to the carrier. And now that there's lots of Ethernet demand and Ethernet is pouring in, the service provider has to say, oh my gosh, how am I going to build an infrastructure that allows me to not only transport all that Ethernet, but aggregate it up as well and hand it off to more expensive service elements. And that's where connection-oriented Ethernet really comes into play, is the building of that service provider infrastructure so you can better enable enterprise Ethernet services, Ethernet-based cell tower backhaul, and even Ethernet-based residential broadband backhaul types of networks as well.
Interesting. And then how does packet optical networking fit into the equation?
Yeah, packet optical networking basically combines, let's say, wavelength, it combines transport and aggregation, think of it that way. And the transport piece is provided by wavelengths, so packet optical networking platforms have a ROADM or a wavelength capability. that's very tightly integrated with a sub-wavelength capability, an electronic capability to provide the aggregation piece. So wavelengths for the transport and Ethernet, for example, for aggregation, very tightly joined in one integrated package.
Good. Are there specific challenges that lie ahead that Fujitsu is looking at addressing in the near future?
Yeah, I think this whole idea of helping service providers to migrate their current optical infrastructure from something that is exclusively SONET-based, or SONET with a little bit of WDM, or SONET with a little bit of WDM with some, let's say, Ethernet service platforms kind of sprinkled in there, and helping them evolve that network to something that's more consolidated, less expensive to own. This packet optical vision is definitely the way we're headed for the next few years. And we see several very interesting possibilities in how to help service providers go through that transition.
This is really a cost-effective solution, and cost savings really the primary driver these days?
Yeah, that's certainly one significant driver. Cost savings and the ability to provide more types of Ethernet services are probably the two of the bigger drivers out there. On the cost savings side of the equation, packet optical networking platforms really help a service provider reduce costs, because they take what used to be in maybe three different elements: a SONET box, a ROADM box, and maybe an Ethernet switch that they're just using for aggregation, and now you can combine that into a single chassis and really reduce a lot of not only capital cost but operation cost as well. And then on the service side of the ledger, this idea of deploying Ethernet private line services using a connection-oriented Ethernet capability has not quite fully been there in the market yet either. So I think as service providers embrace connection-oriented Ethernet, they'll start to innovate with some new types of Ethernet services that more fully duplicate, let's say, the classic characteristics of traditional private line services.
Fantastic. Sounds like an exciting opportunity there for Fujitsu.
Yeah, I think so.
We've been chatting with Sam Lisle from Fujitsu. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Erik.
And enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Right,
enjoy the evening.
All right, will do.